Англієць, який живе в Україні і робить подкаст про український футбол. Сьогодні говоримо з Адамом Пейтом. It's good to have you here. How are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Thanks for inviting us. I'm looking forward to this. I just can't wait to get Euros started now. We've been talking about sort of 12 months of anticipation, just building up. We're ready to just explode, really are.
Yeah, right. So we'll get to Euros, but first I want to ask something. I'm not from the Glenn Hoddle school of thought, but what have you done in your previous life to end up doing a podcast about Ukrainian football?
It's a very good point, mate. It really is. You know, people always surprised when I tell them I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher by trade. Worked qualified in the UK, and always having been a traveller. And I did my first 4 years in Africa. Believe it or not, I was in Nigeria. Desperately wanted to go to a Nigerian game, but the security at the school I was working at, nobody would allow me to go anywhere near a stadium there. I think apparently, true story, one of the previous teachers had gone to a game for one of the African Nation Championship games or one of the youth tournaments, and they were the only white people in the stadium, and Nigeria lost. And some of the locals in the crowd who believed in voodoo thought the white people in the crowd had cursed them and they needed a security escort out to the stadium. It was madness, absolute madness. And then we're in Egypt for a year or so. And at that time, a job cropped up in Ukraine. And having been a football fan, all my life, Dynamo Kiev was a club in particular, just resonated with me. I loved the team from the 90s. I always remember the performance at Wembley against Arsenal in the Champions League was one that really, sort of rang home. And the journey to the semi-final back in the 90s as well, great memories of a real good team. And, Ukraine was a country, it does have a bit of mystique, I think, growing up in Britain, especially in the 80s, when it was the old Soviet times and all those, the countries that got their independence from the USSR. It's kind of, there's a curiosity there. Okay, let's go see what it's like. Moved. It was an experience when I first arrived. I wouldn't be honest with you if I said I enjoyed it. The first year in particular, I walked around thinking, why is everybody so miserable? The first 12 months, I really did. And I had a great bunch of sort of international friends, and we did the whole sort of expat lifestyle thing. And then in my second year there, it was Euros. And, what a great experience that was, for Ukraine in general, living and working in Kyiv at the time. We were in Cruciatic every single night when the fan zone was open, just enjoying the atmosphere, the real buzz of an international tournament. Fortunate not to get tickets for the England-Sweden game and the England-Italy game. I loved the atmosphere inside there. It was great going into Olimpijski. For a while, I was happy I'd, catch the occasional Dynamo Kiev game. And then the revolution happened, 2014 hit. And I think that was the time when I really started to feel a strong attachment to Ukraine, seeing the independence movement at that time was something that, it hit everyone hard. It really did. And, a lot of my international friends chose to leave. They felt uncomfortable. But I felt a real strong desire to stay. And football became kind of a secondary interest for a few years until I met my partner. And she loves traveling around Ukraine. I love going to football. So we had this great sort of agreement. We'd go anywhere, watch a game, go sort of explore the region. And we've had so many holidays all over. And we started a project to get to every corner of Ukraine. I went to every nook and cranny of this great country, and it really is a beautiful country. Especially once you get outside of Kiev, that's something that I didn't realise. First of all, you get out of Kiev and you're like, wow, it's awesome. From Uzhhorod over in the west as far as Kramatorsk in the east, everywhere you go, it's just incredible experiences. And we had a really brilliant time. And from that, people in the media, people in the industry here started to sort of go, who's this English guy going to all these matches? And people in England would be calling me down going, what are you doing over there in the Ukraine with Ukrainian football? People who work in football in England were like, maybe you could introduce us to some people. And through that, it was like, okay, what can we do? And it was like an amalgamation of everything. I then, during lockdown, met the owner of the Shoot the Defence platform online. He was promoting his platform, and I spoke to him. I said, would you like an Eastern European podcast? He was like, I really want to expand it and bring in other leagues. I was like, how do you do it? He went, I'll give you a brief talk, a brief sort of tutorial. I spoke to Andrew, who I'd known through Twitter for a while. I said, would you be interested? I spoke to Vladimir. I said, would you like to come on? He was on lockdown at the time as well. He was like, sure. I spoke to Ray, who actually worked at the school with me, and I knew he's a huge football fanatic like me. And we had our first episode, good to go. And we had no idea what was going to happen, but it became, a real great success. And I think there's a lot of curiosity, in particular, about the fact that we are, especially Andrew and myself, we aren't Ukrainian. The podcast is in English. It's about Ukrainian football. It makes us very unique, I think, and there's a lot of interest in why we like it and what our background is and why do we want to be involved in this football. And we're all very genuine people with genuine reasons. We've got a love for, the football scene here, the football community here. We've got a love for Ukraine as a country in general. So it's why we do it, and we can spread it with the wider world.
What was your fan experience back in England? Did you have a season ticket? Did you travel to away games? Did you follow the national team?
Oh, mate, I was a huge fan as a teenager in particular. Two clubs very close to my heart, Sheffield United and Tamworth from the Southern League. I'm from Tamworth. Yeah, Tamworth originally, born and bred. Made my first trip to Wembley back in 1987 for the FA Vars final against Sudbury Town. I come from a family of Villa fans, and my dad used to give me season tickets, used to try and turn me. But for me, there was a time when between about 13 to 16 where I was going to about 80, 90 games a season. Sheffield United was my passion. Then when Tamworth were playing around Sheffield United, I would go to that game. There were times when I was making 3 games in a day as a 15-year-old. It'd be lunchtime kickoff, 3 o'clock kickoff, evening kickoff. When I got to university and moved away, it did die off a bit. But at that time, Sheffield United being the club it is, and me being from the Midlands, it was very hard to get ingrained into the fan culture there. But being a local boy in Tamworth, you were sort of heart and soul of that club's fan culture. And there was a very sort of tight group of about 100 supporters that would travel all over the country, and you could jump in someone's car and they would take you down to the South Coast for a game at Hastings or Tonbridge. Or I remember leaving school at 3 o'clock to make an Exeter City, 3 hours down, 3 hours back, got back about 2 o'clock in the morning and was back in the class the next day.
When you moved here, when you started going to the games, what was the difference that you've noticed between this fan experience, let's say, except for the sunflower seeds, of course?
Let's go with the similarities first of all with the ultra section. They're more colourful in many ways than the English groups, most definitely. But what I find they're very sort of condensed in. You go to a lot of grounds and the rest of the stadium is quiet. It's people just sat there chatting. We've come to watch a bit of football. We're hanging out with our mates. We're having a chat. We'll applaud a few goals. And the atmosphere elsewhere in grounds quite often is very quiet. And I think one of the things I've liked is when I was traveling around the grounds in particular, and this is why on the podcast we're very passionate about promoting the lower leagues, is you can go to places like Prikopatya in Ivano-Frankivsk, you can go to Veres, you know, congratulations on their promotion, go all the way out to Avangard Kramatorsk, and they've got very active ultra sections that can create these fantastic atmospheres. Is the lifeblood of the supporter experience in the game for the younger generations, and that's what's kept football going for so long. It's the excitement that you get from being part of that fan culture that gets the next generation in, and then, you know, you get to my age and you're supposed to have grown up and it's no longer appealing, but there's still the kid inside of you that when you see the guys lighting the flares and the noise and everything, you want to go and get involved again. I don't think it ever will here. You know, when I talk to people, it's not how people seem to want to enjoy their football experience. One of the things that I've noticed here, doesn't seem to be that much desire within the clubs to engage with the supporters. There are certain clubs, and I'll pull on Veres and Volyn as two examples, where I know that they have very active groups and they have active supporters who are involved in the running of the club. But when you look in general across Ukraine, you don't see that connection between the club and the general community. And Scotland is a brilliant example. When you look as a population percentage who go to grounds and get active in grounds, Scottish football is substantially ahead of the rest of Europe. There is this huge demand from their communities to get into the ground and support their clubs. But what they also have is the SFA there, giving clubs the investment, the desire to create these community programs that reach out into the community, make people feel that connection to the club, that the club is part of their family. So we come on the weekday and you give us this support. Then on the weekend we go and we give you our support and we cheer you along. That
sense of community probably is somewhere in the second division, third division for smaller clubs in smaller towns.
It's a fundamental issue. I've just started a project now with English football, English clubs, where I'm looking into their, community trust, their foundation. And there seems to be the similar sort of sense of purpose within the English clubs. There is a football group called the European Football Clubs for Development Network, and it's a big agency that's led by Belgium and the Dutch clubs in particular, which Scottish clubs are very active in. It was some of the Scottish clubs that directed me to it. And the only club in Eastern Europe that's part of it is Shakhtar. I see football as bigger than 11 guys running, I see it as a bigger thing than that. Football is a game that has managed to permeate into so many different ways of society that we have to see it as a bigger entity than just a game of football. I was so disappointed this season with the Menai story, the scandal in Menai. I was like, when I talked to some of the employees at the club, it filled me with optimism. I thought, oh, great. Here is a small club that's trying to grow in a positive way. They seem to have lots of good ideas of how to reach out to the community. And then boom, we have the Shakhtar fiasco and all credibility gone. And you're like, oh, God, it's a real simple thing. Listen to people, listen to what they want, give them it, and they will give you back. Listen to your supporters, listen to the people in your family, and they will give you, it's unconditional love.
Do you know the answer to the question why people are so miserable in Ukraine?
Oh, they're not. No, Ukrainians aren't miserable. It's just that outside that they don't want you in, but once they let you in, they're some of the warmest, most generous people you could want to ever meet.
So you started going to the games, to the club games, I assume, but What about the national team?
I mean, I've been watching them from a distance, but over 12 months ago in particular, I did a whole load of scouting courses and got interested in the tactical side of things. And I always remember when I started the course, a fellow called Jed Searson said to me, "You'll never look at a game of football the same after you've been on these courses." And he's right. Now, I'm happy to watch any game, around the globe, and I'll enjoy watching any game around the globe. And it's, 12 months ago, I wouldn't have thought I'd have said that. So with regards to the Ukrainian national team now, I have a great curiosity about them, how they're going to go into the tournament. I want to understand how they're developing. I really like the potential of the youth that's coming through here in Ukraine. And I want to see how the team is now, to see how these good young talented players are going to fit in the future, hopefully within 2 or 3 years' time. If the federation manage their development appropriately, big if there, there's the potential to have some great talents. So it's, I've been watching the matches this season. I've seen the growth of Shevchenko as a coach, from the disaster in France and the disaster in Spain in particular, where he wanted to go head to head with the Spanish team. And then it was like a step up in maturity when they went back to Paris for the World Cup qualifier in March with it was okay, right, we need to treat this game a bit more respectfully. We'll put the defensive stability in there, and it was a well-deserved 1-1 draw. Pre the Northern Ireland game, I was really frustrated with the team, really, really frustrated with them. That game, from an attacking sense, gave me a lot more optimism. Prior to that, it felt like the national team were playing a lot like Shakhtar over the last season. There was, a whole bunch of talented attacking players up front with no sense of what their role was in the team. They didn't understand how to function as a unit. But then Yarmolenko came back in. Zubkov, for the last 2 games, has played like a whole new talent compared to previous matches I've seen him in. By Zubkov pulling out wide, it created all this space for Zinchenko to exploit as well. But whereas in the previous games, they'd been so congested in the midfield, it's like you're trying to thread the needle, the thread through the needle. It had to be so precise. And yeah, we saw a couple of cracking little goals in the qualifiers in particular, but it was only 1 or 2, and it was incredibly frustrating the amount of possession they had that they just didn't score. Defensively, there's the potential for a mistake. We know that, but we've got to have a reasonable amount of confidence. I think with the back line, the goalkeeper's still a bit iffy for me. None of the 3 I have great confidence in.
Would you say that, Ukraine is a football mad country? Because I don't think it is. Is it a footballing nation?
I wouldn't say it's a football mad country at all. I've been in parts of the country where people are like, well, there's football going on. You can go to parts of this country where in the entire region there may be 1 professional team, or not even any professional teams. If that's the case, there's not a real desire in many parts of the country. It's got the potential to grow into a football mad country, depending on the choices that the federation make in particular. There's inklings of positive signs. Some people like to refer to them as village teams or farmer teams that have cropped up. Some people say to the detriment of the game here. I think to the benefit of the game, because it takes a good standard of football and makes it more of a country game. It takes it out into the regions, takes it into the smaller communities. I mean, as a footballing nation, I would say yes. I think if you went into schools, and I am going to say you ask the boys, we're not at the stage here where you ask the boys and the girls, but I think in particularly if you ask the boys, how many of you would like to be footballers when you grow up? The majority of them would put up their hands, you know, and that for me is a big sign of a footballing nation. There is that desire. If you ask the problem where, you know, Ukraine needs to overcome is that if you ask most of those boys, would you like to play for Dynamo Kiev or Shakhtar? They'd say we would prefer to play for Barcelona or Real Madrid or AC Milan or Bayern Munich or Chelsea or, you know, and that's the problem that Ukraine's going to need to overcome is that, yeah, these kids, they love their football, but they're very eager to get away from Ukraine to go and play football there. That for it to go from being a football nation to a football mad nation, where it's, you know, an internally mad nation, shall we say, where it's got a pride in its own football, a desire to be involved in its own football. That's the barrier that it really needs to overcome. Get the kids to those games, get them to be proud of those teams, and that's then when it becomes football mad country. These kids that love football, I can guarantee you where I am now, there's 100 kids that love football and they can't wait to watch the Euros. They're going to be watching the games. They're going to be cheering on Ukraine. They're also going to be watching England, Spain, France, Italy, Germany. And when the Champions League is on, they're going to be cheering on all those Super League wannabe teams. But then when the UPL comes on, they're not going to be interested. When there's a game going on, say I'm based in Borispol, when Borispol are playing in the amateur championship, I'm guaranteed there's not one school group taking their kids to go watch that game on a Saturday afternoon. There won't be one. Whereas when I was a kid, my Tamworth, my local club, would give out free tickets all the time to schools.
Talking to people who've heard about some darker sides of Ukrainian football, does it put you off a bit?
People call me too optimistic for my own good at times. Yeah, we all know those stories, and they really do. They pee off. I've heard 100 other stories as well. And I find myself at times when I see a successful team wondering why they're as successful as they are. If we don't try, it's never going to change. If we don't try and raise awareness, get people interested, get people talking about it, then who else is going to do it? To be perfectly honest, we said we're the first English language podcast, and if we hadn't have done it, no one else would have done it. And you say now people want to come and talk to us. We recently spoke to the people in Krivbas because it's great to see that project is being reborn, it's being revitalized. We don't know if it's for the good or for the bad of the game at the moment, but we're going to give it its airtime. We're going to give it its opportunity to shine because it's one that we need to put the light on. Veres Rivna, it's the one that I see a lot of community action on. So I'm very passionate about that one because I saw them, over the last 12 months, their board of directors going into schools, planting trees, getting the kids to go and plant 1 million trees for Rivna, a project that they ran and things like that. It's like, yeah, these are the clubs we need to shine the lights on. If they're going on, let's go on. If further down the line, it turns out there was something slightly darker underneath, then, well, we still try. My intention is to live here for the rest of my life. I've got no intentions of moving. I'm very happy and settled here. This is the league that I want to be involved in. English league's a great league, but I've got no desire to live in England. The Italian league's a great league, but I've got no desire to live there. And I want a league here that I can be involved in and be proud of.
If we can have more of this in Ukrainian football, then probably, we'll have some new stories to talk about, and not only dark stories.
Yeah, there was 12 months ago, I met the owner of the fan experience company, Mark Bradley, and they are the guys that brought the Premier League awards in, the Football League awards for fan experience. And clubs now can get this sort of fans charter to prove that they are a fan-centric the former head of marketing at the Ukrainian Federation, Alexander Kucherai, who's now involved in UEFA. He actually invited Mark out to work on some projects in Eastern Europe, and he's been involved in Estonia and Moldova. We've spoken at length about Ukraine and said, it really needs it here as well. It's what's required here. But at the top level at the moment, there isn't that desire. Still at the moment, it's not the case on the present organisation. It would need a change, and as with the country in general,
Talking about European Championship, so you say you're optimistic before the tournament, right?
Yeah, I am. I mean, we were talking with the guys on the podcast last night, and quarterfinals I think are realistic. Is a realistic expectation. I think beyond that, no. But I think quarterfinals, similar to World Cup 2006, be a really excellent achievement. But I think it's a realistic target as well. The Holland game, they're a country that's in a bit of a mess. They've got probably one of their poorest managers that they've had for a long time in Frank de Boer there. He's a bit of a charismatic man without much backbone to back it up, shall we say, given his career in management. I'm more than confident that we can come out of that game with a draw. We drew with France in Paris, just 3 months ago. And if we played the tactics right, the Dutch will be very easy to frustrate. Very easy to score against, I think, as well. We can definitely grab a goal there. Then going the North Macedonia game, on paper, they're the weakest team in the tournament. Now they're coming in full of confidence with nothing to lose. And they're going to go at it all guns blazing like Iceland did in France in 2016. They really are. If Ukraine go out and play to their best, put in a professional performance, they should win. Now you're going to sit there saying, well, when you talk about national team supporters who've been following for a long time, the words professional performance and things like that don't resonate so well, don't stand the test of time. But Ukraine, North Macedonia, as a betting man, I'm going to put my money on Ukraine. And 9 times out of 10, I would expect to win that bet. Then it goes into the Austria game. And I mean, first of all, third place gets you through the group stage. Second place, I'm not too sure on the draw, but I think the second place team gets quite a favourable second round opponent. So the Austria game will be the one that will have everything riding on it. And I watched Austria play against England. They don't look full of confidence. There is talent in that team. There's certainly talent in the Ukrainian team. I think, like we said, in our podcast with the other Bundesliga guys, it could be a very dull game with two teams very afraid to lose. But again, on paper, you say you look at the talent in the Ukrainian team, you've got to think against Austria, they should win. Then you go into the second round, and as I say, I think if we get first or second in the group, it should be a favourable tie in the last 16.
You've done a fantastic series, Welcome to Scotland, on your podcast. So I hope when the day comes, you'll be supporting the right team at Wembley.
I'll be right on the halfway line that day. I'm right on the halfway. Now, of course, I support England. I'm sorry. I always want England to win first and foremost in every option, as we all do with our nations. My second team in the tournament, of course, will be Ukraine and not Scotland. In all seriousness, though, Dima, I'm looking forward to the derby against the old enemy at Wembley.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the work you're doing there for the Ukrainian football, because it's something really special. to see someone coming into the country, getting into the football and wanting to do something different from that passion and understanding of how community should actually work with the football club and how the football club should work with the community. So thanks a lot for this chat. And I do hope that your prediction about the quarterfinal will come through. And of course, I do hope that Scotland will beat England.
What do you reckon? Scotland, Ukraine in the quarterfinal. Wouldn't that be the dream for you?
Oh, that would be lovely.
It'd be absolutely superb. Yeah. I've really enjoyed it as well. Thanks so much for inviting me on. It's been great fun. Can't wait to get started.